Welcome, one and all. Thank you guys for being here today. We are in another brand new season 2 of Ask the Talk Doctor Live. This is such an important milestone for me, and I hope you will celebrate with me today. This is Power Talks with the Talk Doctor featuring Ask the Talk Doctor Live, and I am so very excited that it is Friday. Not only that it's Friday, it's that you are here. You are here with us today. You are here to just be in this moment and experience such a wonderful topic that we have planned for you today. Wherever you're checking in from, why don't you just put a comment in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from today, whether you're joining us from the East Coast, the West Coast. Just tell us what city and state you'll be joining from. We would love to be able to acknowledge you on this show today. And thank you so much for being a loyal listener. If you're joining us for the first time, again, we're live on YouTube and Instagram, so you can join us from either one of those platforms. We've got a fantastic show planned here for you today, and we are so excited that you chose to be here. Perhaps you've been here before. You spearheaded a project that impacted your company or your organization in such a huge way, or you came up with a brilliant idea and now it's being used in your company, but nobody ever acknowledged you for it. Perhaps you're one who's being bullied at work. Maybe it's a supervisor, a manager, or a coworker that the bullying just seems unending. Maybe you were passed up for a promotion or something, and numerous times, although you've proven yourself worthy, you've still been passed up. Workplace trauma happens more often than we think. And there are many people suffering today in toxic work environment, feeling like there's just no way out for them. Even worse, perhaps you've been called out of your name at your job or heard somebody say something to you or a coworker that is racially, sexually, or otherwise offensive. Sounds like you? Have you been there? Well, as I said before, you're not alone. Today, we're talking about overcoming workplace trauma and finding your resilience. Thank you so much for being here. I'm your host, Dr. Dacia of Power Talks with the Talk Doctor featuring Ask the Talk Doctor Live. You know, I have patients who come to me all the time experiencing workplace trauma. And the way it shows up in the workplace, or the way they show up in my office, rather, is oftentimes they'll tell me that they're experiencing a lot of stress at work. Because, you know, traumatic situations oftentimes can show up in our lives as stress or anxiety or depression. But when we dive in, we often find that it's the things that are going on in the workplace that may be so hard for them to cope with and manage that it shows up and it really taxes you mentally and allows you to feel as if there's no way to cope. Maybe it's the microaggressions that one of you might be experiencing, as one of my patients recently reported. You know, she told me they were on a Zoom call all together in a meeting, and to her surprise, she raised her hand to ask a question using the little hand icon that, you know, we've all become so accustomed to because we work in this virtual environment now. But when she did so, to her surprise, her supervisor rolled her eyes. This patient was taken aback. She couldn't believe this was happening. And she was so embarrassed because if she saw the eye roll, everybody else on the call saw it as well. So she was so frustrated about this, she didn't know what to do. And finally, she decided, I'm going to schedule a time to talk to her because I've got to address this. To her surprise, what ended up happening when she went to her supervisor and said, hey, what's going on? I noticed when I raised my hand, you rolled your eyes. Well, she didn't not admit that she didn't do it, but what she did was to give herself a pass. The supervisor said to her, I'm dealing with a lot of stress in my life. I didn't mean anything by it. where does that leave this employee? She gave herself a pass. And it's unfortunate because when she stood up for herself and addressed this concern, she did not get the support that she thought she would. And a lot of times we sit in silence and we suffer through these microaggressions or through these traumatic situations that tend to happen that I mentioned before. Well, I have a guest here today who's going to talk to us about that. And I'm really excited to talk to her. Her name is Leticia Francis. She's a business coach and market research consultant. And she has had her own share of workplace trauma and other trauma that existed in her life as well. You know, her story may help to inspire you, but what was really important for me when I met this young lady is the resilience that she shows. She is somebody who is joining us today from Croatia. And yes, Power Talks with the Talk Doctor is international. Our guest is in Croatia. So let's hope that the bandwidth and the internet works properly so we can get her to come in and show us a little bit about where she's joining us from. But a little bit about my guest. She is dedicated to helping Black women build a profitable service-based business and prepare for leaving the corporate life, if that's what they desire. She's currently traveling full-time with her husband and her 2 toddlers, and they are here, to talk about a new climate of work, work from anywhere. Many of us are doing that now, really embracing the idea of work from anywhere. And if you're one, you'll be inspired by what she's doing as well. And, one of the things that I hope that emerges here today as she talks to us from Croatia, where she is temporarily with her family, is that you'll be able to gain some insights into how you go about overcoming this idea of the trauma you may be experiencing in the workplace and find your own resilience, find your own way of emerging from this. So without further delay, we're going to go ahead and bring on my dynamic and wonderful guest here. I'm so excited to share her with you. Let's go ahead and bring her on. Leticia Francis, welcome to Power Talks with the Talk Doctor and Ask the Talk Doctor Live. I think you're still on mute. You may need to unmute yourself there. There you go. Hello there. Welcome.
Ciao, as they say in Croatia.
Ciao, as they say in Croatia. Listen to this. It's such a beautiful day here, and I'm sure it is where you are. And I'm so excited that you have chosen to spend your time with us. Tell my viewers a little bit about the experiences that you have had thus far in your travel. We're excited to learn about this work from anywhere, and you have taken it to the next level. You're in a whole nother country. Now, when I met you, you were in Spain, and now you've moved to Croatia. Tell us a little bit about this idea of working from anywhere.
Well, I really want to give your viewers a bit of background. Back in February of this year, my family and I were given a note for eviction notice. And initially, okay, we have to move, no problem. Months went by and I was unable to find a suitable location. And I jokingly said to my husband, we should just pack up everything and travel. And when I said it, he was like, yes, I was expecting a no.
You got the unexpected.
He said, yes, let's do it. So our first stop was Seville, Spain, where we spent 90 days. And we took our children along with us. We've been learning the language, learning the culture. And our plan is to travel indefinitely.
Wow.
Spending 2 to 3 months in different countries, giving my children who are 2 and 4 currently the opportunity to experience the culture.
Yeah.
From a local's point of view. and teach them, because I also homeschool, teach them through that cultural experience.
Wow, that is so awesome. So it's almost like you're killing two birds with one stone here. What I heard her say is that, housing situation was very unstable in the US, and she turned her lemons into lemonade. Why don't we just travel? And the idea that you're able to do so, homeschool your children, but give them such a cultural immersion. This is just priceless when I hear you say that, but for some of you, it may be a little bit nerve wracking to think about uprooting your whole life, in a space that you're used to, and just travel. But here's this woman who's doing this. Well, what we want to hear about today, because this is really why we're here, is about the trauma that exists in the workplace through your eyes, because you yourself, before you got to this place, experienced some trauma of your own. So give us a little bit of background, kind of set it up for us to help us understand, how did you go from there to here?
Yeah, so I wasn't in the US, I was in England. I've been located in England for almost 9 years, and I was working as the data manager of the top 5 Lloyd's of London syndicate. I was hired to come in and create a system and build a team around the system that I created, and I did that successfully for 6 years.
Yes.
And as a foreign Black woman, because I'm originally from Bermuda, the trauma I experienced in that environment was unreal. Lloyd's of London, for those who don't know, is the oldest insurance institution in the world. They created the idea of insurance, and it's very steeped in tradition.
Yes.
So as you can imagine, my face was rare. I was amongst a lot of English white men who felt that I was out of place. And while I was running a multinational team on the back of my intellectual property,
yes,
I was not allowed to make decisions. I used to get comments like, "Why are you here? Whose job did you take?" Being in meetings, and I used to have knee-length dreads, which I had grown for 20 years, and having comments about my dreads. Look at that woolly stuff on the top of your head. It can't be real. And joking, like in a room full of 5 or 6 white men joking about my hair, about my culture, about my accent, about the fact that I use my hands when I talk. I'm completely dismissed. And I think the trauma really escalated when I was pregnant and then on maternity leave. I had 2 children, 18 months apart. Maternity leave in England is 12 months. So I was out of work for 18 months in a 3-year period, and I wasn't replaced during that time. So when I returned back from work, after the first pregnancy, my team was in chaos, the process was in chaos, and I wrote a 10-page report full of recommendations to my manager and the chief underwriting officer of what needed to be fixed in order for us to get back on track. My recommendations were ignored. And what eventually happened was crisis. And I was left having to clean it up.
Clean up the mess. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're joining us, or if you're just joining us, we're talking with Leticia Francis, coach and business analyst. She is sharing her story with us, and it's quite compelling. This existed over in the UK through a company, Lloyd's of London. You may know about it, where her talent was sort of swept under the rug, so to speak, brushed aside, although the company benefited from the talent. We're talking about overcoming workplace trauma and finding resilience. And I'm horrified to hear some of the things she's sharing with us about the racism that she encountered, the sexism that she encountered. And many of you that are listening here today may be going through some of the same things. Hers was blatant. When I hear her talk about her dreads being talked about at the time, how her gestures are, how she uses gestures to talk. We think about these things and we wonder, how could people work alongside each other and behave so badly? But it does happen. And I want to acknowledge some of you who checked in. I see you, Eva, Diane on Instagram, Jazzy, thank you for being here, Laura on YouTube. Thank you, all of you. Go ahead and check in and tell us where you're joining from as our guest continues her story. Now, at what point did you get to the realization that this environment is toxic? I can't work here anymore. I hear you said you went out on maternity leave, and one thing that the UK have going for them, they give women 12 months of maternity leave, and some of us who are in the US, we know it's like 6 weeks when we have to go. So that was a plus. But to be in an environment like this where things were so unstable, and then to come back and the work that you put in was just turned upside down, and then your recommendations ignored. What was that like for you? And when did you realize that I can't do this?
It was annoying to say the least. I mean, before having children, the role that I had and the systems that I built and the team that I built, that was my baby. That was my blood, sweat, and tears. So I wanted to see it succeed. So, I gave my all because that was what I was conditioned to do as a young Black woman. You have to show up twice as hard.
Twice as hard.
So that you can be seen.
To prove yourself.
And that's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the turning point for me was the return after my second maternity leave. And it was like Groundhog Day. They hadn't replaced me. Things were falling apart. It was almost exactly the same position that I was in when I returned this last time. Mm-hmm. And I remember being in a meeting and bringing that to my manager's attention, and he just dismissed me. And I got off that call that day and I said to my husband, I can't do this anymore. But what am I going to do? I had started my business, but it was in an infant stage.
Right.
But I couldn't walk away in that moment. So I stayed for months. Mm-hmm. Very resentful, very angry. And this time when things hit crisis mode, I was completely thrown under the bus. And I remember being in a meeting and a man said, "Listen, little Black girl." Oh. And I put him in his case swiftly because I don't care how much money you pay me, you will not disrespect me like that. And then my manager sending me an email after that meeting telling me that I was rude and I created the chaos on that call. That was my last working day before I resigned.
That was your turning point.
And although I had a 3-month notice period, I checked out that day.
Yeah.
I just realized that no matter what I do, I'm not going to be respected here.
Yeah.
I had had enough of that throughout my career and throughout my life, if I'm honest, So I just made a decision. I'm going to take a gamble on you. I'm going to walk away, and I'm going to use all of the skills and talents that made that company millions. I'm going to use that for myself.
Yes, indeed. This is so inspiring. Real talk. She said, even though I was being disrespected, my talent was not being appreciated for what it was. And then the final straw to be called little Black girl in front of other people, and then have to sit and endure that afterwards, because here she is, a mother, a wife, and she has children to support, a family to help support. What do I do? And many of you out there are probably experiencing that as well, because all too often we get caught up in the money that we're making. So what am I going to do if I walk away from this? So we sit and we endure it. But what happens when we endure it? What happens to our psyche? What does that do to us overall as a person? Tell us what it did to you, like sitting there for those next few months. I hear you say I checked out. And obviously, that's what a lot of people do. Their productivity goes down because now I feel devalued. And so, why am I continuing to give this company or this workplace my all, my talent? But it does something to us mentally to have to be in an environment like that that is so toxic, yet we have to continue to produce. Tell us a little bit about those 3 months that you still had to sit there and wait it out. What was it like emotionally?
If I'm honest, I used all of their time to build my business. I
Hmm.
used it productively, if I'm honest. But I will say the trauma responses that I picked up as a result of the workplace trauma that I went through, it became very apparent as I built my business. Not being able to trust my own decisions,
Yes.
not believing that I had to work myself to the bone to be successful, not being trusting,
Yes.
and seeking community early on into entrepreneurship, because I gave everything to my company and it was thrown in my face. So how can I trust other people?
Yeah.
So a lot of that is what I had to rewrite.
Right.
I had to establish my worth.
Right.
I was making good money, but while I was working, I always said they weren't paying me enough. When it came to valuing my skills and my talents in my own business, I was undervaluing myself. I was setting my price according to what my last company gave me.
Interesting.
Even though I was unhappy while I was there. So it was a lot of rewriting of narratives that were picked up as a result of the trauma that I experienced in workplace.
Yeah. So the trauma, you took the trauma and you turned it into something that was an opportunity to really emerge from this in a space of learning. But I also heard you say before that you had to recognize that now that I sat and I endured this, I now have these trauma responses. And for those of you who don't understand what that means, oftentimes we think we're okay. But when we realize that we're not okay is when other people see our responses and our reactions, those stress reactions, those isolation, those withdrawal, those shutting down, things like not even recognizing your worth anymore, your value anymore, second guessing yourself. As I heard my guest say, she became very insecure about who she was and what her worth and value was, and even thinking about how to price her product, her service, that to her as well. So rewriting our narrative becomes a great way to really begin to establish ourselves as we think about emerging from our trauma with resilience. And I want to talk a little bit about resilience. Let's talk about what it means to you, or what it meant to you to have had this experience to get to your resilience. I mean, somebody who can make a decision to pick up from the United States and travel across the globe and travel every 2 to 3 months have to be really resilient to be able to do that. So let's talk to the guests about how they too can tap into their resilience, because I always say, we've got it in us. You just have to find it.
I think it's about tapping into your heart and your soul, right? And being honest with ourselves. I think a lot of times we don't actually know what we want out of life, out of our career, out of our circumstances. And I think it's about getting grounded in that and getting honest and not limiting ourselves, right?
Yes.
And that is, for me, was the driving forward for me. I remember having a conversation probably 18 months before I resigned about what my ideal day looked like. And I talked about traveling because I was teaching my children about Spain. They would learn about it in Spain.
Yeah.
And when I said it, I didn't actually think it was a reality. But when I started my business, I got grounded in, I am doing this because eventually I want to live my life on my own terms.
Yes.
And I had to understand what my own terms meant.
Right.
It's a great cliche when we say
it really is.
Getting grounded in what that actually means for us.
Yes.
And for me, it's all about the time spent and the memories created with my family.
Absolutely. That's so great. I just love the way you put that, that a lot of times we say what we want, but we are not really grounded in what we want. And we let that tiny little word fear get in the way. And that, I think, is just sort of the very thing, the very barrier to our resilience. Because, the Bible says there is no fear in love. Perfect love casted out fear. And I truly believe that if you live your life from the perspective that there is no fear. Yes, fear is there, but you can look fear in the face and recognize I am worth so much more than this fear. I can't allow this fear to stop me from becoming who I was made to be. And I hear that so much emerging from you, that when you got grounded in your sense of self and recognize that it's not just a cliche, it's about I'm doing this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to keep going. Give us some advice about what do you say to your clients now when they tell you that they're going through this situation, but they need their paycheck and they're afraid to step out on faith and do what they need to do, again, to take care of yourself emotionally because you've been so damaged by the workplace, whether you work in the corporate or the public sector, just the day-to-day damage that it's doing to you mentally. I don't want to do this anymore, but I need my paycheck. I got a family to support. What do you tell your clients when you coach them?
When other people, when you mention fear, so what happens when we are looking to step outside of our comfort zone, we conjure up the worst case scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
And mine, when I was thinking about resigning, was that I would end up homeless, sitting outside a store, jingling a tin can, asking someone for coins, right? That was my worst case scenario. So my worst case scenario, I became homeless, technically, right?
Yes.
That opened up the biggest opportunity in my life. So
That's
I say
amazing.
to my clients, I believe fear is an indicator.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very much like an invisible fence that they color, that they put around dogs instead of putting up fences.
Yeah.
Like when you get too close to your comfort zone, your primitive brain is like, wait a minute.
Right.
We're not going there.
Right.
And I think that's our signal to keep going.
Yes, it
because
is.
that when we move outside of our comfort zone, that's when we actually start living. That's when we actually start realizing our dreams.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell my clients to spend some time exploring where that fear is coming from, but also challenging the narratives that you have around that fear, rewriting them in a way that inspires action.
Yes.
So that you can continue to move forward.
That's so wonderful. And when you recognize that you have the power to write your own narrative, you give away your power when you let someone else, something else, write the narrative for your life. But when you realize that you have the power within to write your own narrative, to create that script, you can erase the barriers because you're in control of that. And so allowing that to happen, and I hear you say, the worst thing that I thought about came to fruition. Now what? Now what? Do I sit there and say, woe, it's me? Absolutely not. This is a test. This is only a test to see now that you've pushed yourself past your limit. What are you going to do with it? And I hear you talk about opportunity. Opportunity emerges when we push past those limitations. But when we let fear stop us and become a barrier, we never, ever know what we're made of. And I really hear that emerging so much from you. I could talk to you all day. Your story is so inspiring. So my guests want to see a little bit about, my viewers want to see a little bit of Croatia. I know that the bandwidth is a little bit sketchy. So wherever you are, kind of show us out your window, what it looks like. It's so amazing to have you joining us from there. So show us a little bit about what it looks like outside your window.
Sure, one second.
So she's going to give us a little eye view. Yes,
so
we see that.
Croatia.
Nice.
Full of mountains and sea. I hope you can see it.
Oh, we can see it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's the sun.
The sun is setting. Yes, beautiful, beautiful. Opportunity, push past your limits. You got this. You can do this. And nobody is telling you not to be wise or strategic. She said to us that even after she had gone through what she had gone through and been called Black girl or whatever the case may be, she had to really sit and strategize. And when it was time, she allowed herself to emerge from there with such resilience. So, coming up next, we are answering questions. This is our question and answer segment. And as you all know the drill, this is Ask the Talk Doctor Live segment where we get a viewer to send in a question. We try to tackle it. You know, we're running short on time, so I may not be able to take you guys' questions that are online here, but I encourage you to send me your questions to askthetalkdoctorlive at gmail.com. We'd love to hear your question on the show. Leticia, can you stick around for a few moments to help me answer this viewer's question? All right, so here we are. This viewer writes in, Dear Talk Doctor, I recently learned that my employer is asking everyone to come back into the office at the beginning of next year. Probably something you are going through as well. I immediately got a pain in my stomach and in my chest area. Now, every time I think about it, I experience the same physical pain. Lately, I've been crying a lot. In case you are wondering why I'm having this reaction to returning to my office, the environment is not emotionally safe for me. I am in a team that operates like a clique. Even my supervisor is part of the clique. I often feel isolated from everyone else. They go to lunch together, they hang out together after work, and I'm not included. I'm afraid to speak up in team meetings when I have an issue, and I'm afraid to talk to my supervisor because she doesn't really care for me. I'm afraid to report these behaviors because it's only going to result in even more isolation for me. I've been very content working from home. In fact, working from home feels safe. I have also felt very much at peace doing my work and not having to interact with my team members. What should I do, Talk Doctor? All right. That's a loaded, very heavy one, right? So let's unpack it a little bit. And I want you to kind of, give us your really quick and dirty, response to what you would tell this lady that's going through this situation.
Every circumstance that we are in can benefit us in some way, right? And I can relate wholeheartedly. I worked from home for a very long time and never wanted to go in the office. So, but when I did go in, I always used to say, this is just a job. It's getting me to my end goal. So I would say to that listener to really again get grounded in what do you want out of your job? What benefits do you want to reap from that? And you stay connected to that. It's hard to ignore the actions of others as they impact us. But I would just say, I'm doing this because of every time. And let that motivate you. Yes, it's tough. Yeah, it is a lot to deal with. But again, get grounded in what it is that you want from it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And make it work for you.
Absolutely. I love that answer so much. So getting grounded. And one of the things I tell my patients all the time when they're in this situation, whether they feel like they've gotten to the place where they no longer have motivation to do the job that they're doing, or they feel that they're in a very toxic environment, you do have to get focused. You've got to go back to the value. Why am I doing the very thing that I'm doing? Why am I here? And if you can't answer that question, it may be time to talk about what's my next. Because if you still want to be in that space because you love your job, and let's face it, there are some people who love their job, but it's just the people around them that makes it hard for them. You have to shift your focus. You can't focus on those people and those things. One of the things about bullying at work, and I don't condone bullying at all, I always say the bully on the playground grew up. And now you're dealing with the bully in the workplace. But what do we do with the bully on the playground to make the bully stop? We've got to expose the bully so that the bully no longer thinks, because the bully wants to do this in private so they can mess with your mind. But when the bully is exposed, there's no longer a challenge. You're out there, you're bullying somebody, shame on you. So if she chooses to stay, and we have to address the issue of going back, now she's afraid, now she can't go back into her office. She has to say something about what's going on, because shame on that supervisor for not upholding the role and responsibility they have to their entire team. And then the other part of that, I would echo what you said about going back to the value of what you're doing. Why are you here? Find joy in that again and make that your focus and shine from there. And when it's time, you'll know, because you'll no longer feel that sense of value in what you do. And perhaps it's time for you to emerge from that place into your next. I love so much that you chose to be here with us today, taking your time. It was an honor and a privilege to be able to interview you and to talk about what you and your family are doing and all of the resilience that you have shown. I thank you for your wisdom that you shared with my viewers here today. How can they find you if they want to, tap into some of your wisdom and knowledge in the area of business coaching?
Yeah, so I can be found on Instagram at Black Rose Coaching. Black is spelled BLAQUE. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Leticia Francis. And just reach out to me or go to my website, blackrosecoaching.com, and get connected. I love building relationships. I love having conversations. I mean, that's how you and I met.
That's how we met. Yes.
Yes. Reach out, say hi.
Yes.
And let's start a conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So again, if you want to know how to contact Leticia Francis, she is at Black Rose Coaching. So that's BLAQUEROSE coaching altogether.com. And you can reach her that way on Instagram as well. She's very knowledgeable. And those of you who have the entrepreneurial spirit, I would encourage you to maybe tap into some of her wisdom to inspire you to go forward and be the person that you were created to be. Thank you so much for being here. We're not going to take up any more of your time. I am truly grateful for the time that you spent with us today.
Thank you.
Take care. So bye-bye. So we're going to do a little bit of a wrap up here. Thank you guys so much for staying on with us. The time goes by so fast when you're having so much fun. But in closing, I want to leave with you this quote by Dieter Uchtdorf. I hope I said his name correctly. He said, "It's your reaction to adversity and not adversity itself that determines how your life story develops." That's so good, because as we said before, you control the narrative. You write the narrative. Let's face it, life will have its fair share of suffering and struggles. But the one thing that you have complete control of is how we choose to react and respond to the situations that we face in life. Knowing that you have the power of choice is half the battle. What you do with that power is priceless. I like to think of this from a biblical perspective, because Christ himself went through much adversity in his work while he was here on earth. Yes, if you didn't know it, Christ did work too. But he emerged from the resistance and the adverse situations he faced with much dignity and resilience, but most of all, with love. May you think of yourself as one who has much resilience within you, that whatever you may be going through, whether in your work life or in your personal life, that you may believe that you have the faith to believe that there is a solution, but the solution lies in the power to believe that you can emerge from your situation stronger, more confident, and more resilient than ever. I want to remind us all, if you didn't already know, that September, although we're almost done with it, September is Suicide Prevention Month. One of the things about trauma, left unchecked, can lead to thoughts of suicide. I encourage you, I implore you, don't let this be you. Write your story, write your narrative. If you're going through a situation and it's tough on your mind, it's tough on your mental health, don't let it get to the place where you get to a space of really doing something permanent to a temporary situation. You have the power to seek help. Help is available. There's many resources out there, whether you choose to work with a coach or a licensed psychotherapist like myself, or a counselor, or if you are in crisis. The wonderful thing, if you're located in the United States, there's a helpline as simple as 988. Contact the helpline or go to 988lifeline.org. Very important. If you or someone you know is struggling and they're contemplating suicide, please pass on this resource to them. Help is available. Help is also available, as my guest said here today, that if you are somebody who wants to explore really going out on your own and looking at the resilience that you have, sometimes we don't recognize our talents and gifts until we allow ourselves to emerge from the stress that we may be under and allow ourselves to do something differently, change things up, change your narrative, and you'll see where opportunity does exist. So again, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's broadcast. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel so more people can find us. We want to be able to bring these dynamic talks to you to help to encourage you and grow your faith and grow your resilience. I hope you gained something from today. Write to me in the comments and tell me what you gained, what you learned. I'm so grateful that you have chosen to be here today. And I wish you all the very best. Be well, take care of yourself and each other, and we'll see you next time on Power Talks with the Talk Doctor, featuring Ask the Talk Doctor Live. Mwah. Bye now.